Hi everybody. In this video, we're going to talk about the difference between judgment and discernment. Thank you to everyone who's joining me. So, a question I get from a lot of my clients, a lot of the people that call into the podcast and come to my retreats is, how do I know if I'm judging? You know, I'm working on myself. I'm learning how to be a less fear-based person. I'm learning how to be a more kind person. But how do I know if I'm judging versus how do I just have opinions? Okay, so this is the difference between judgment and discernment. It's natural for all of us as human beings to judge. Let's just get that out there right away. We all judge. We judge ourselves, we judge others. It's part of the way that we navigate the world. As we evolve and as we start to let go of a lot of our triggers and have more awareness that we're all one and we're all love and all the things that we know up here, as we start to have more awareness, we start to judge a little less. Now, that doesn't mean that just anything goes. That doesn't mean that all of a sudden we like everyone and everything. We still can have preferences. We still can have people in our life that we don't prefer. We can still have things about ourselves that we don't really love. We can still have situations that we don't want to be in. And that doesn't mean we're judging. It means that we have discernment. So here's the difference. You know you're judging if you're triggered. How do you know you're triggered? Well, generally you know you're triggered for a couple reasons. Number one way you know you're triggered is your reaction to the situation is much bigger, or even just a little bit bigger than what actually happened. So let's say a friend sends you a text about something and you are just so upset. You know, maybe can't come to dinner that night and you had plans. And you are so upset and so hurt. She's not saying she doesn't want to be your friend anymore. So the reaction is way bigger than what actually happened. Then you know you're judging. You're judging her for being a flake, for whatever your judgments may be, and you're judging yourself for whatever you're making that mean about you, okay? That's a judgment. When the trigger is big, the reaction is big, and you get upset and you can't let something go. You're in judgment. Discernment is when you have a preference about something. When someone does something, either one time or repeatedly, and you go, you know what? That just doesn't feel good. And I prefer not to have that in my life. And like back to the friend text, if she flakes on you over and over again, you could eventually get to the point of discerning, you know what, this isn't the kind of friend that's in alignment with me. And I'm making a decision, I have an opinion, but it's a preference and there's no trigger. My reaction is not huge, it's just a preference. The example I like to use is, okay, we've all been to buffets. I love buffets, no self-control at them. But anyway, we've been to buffets and we go through the line and we pick what we like. When we see food that we don't necessarily like, we don't make it wrong. We don't have a big reaction. We don't call somebody and have it removed from the buffet table. We just pass. It's like, no, thank you. That's discernment. And I want to encourage you, especially those of you that have this expectation on yourself that you're supposed to love everything and everyone, and the minute you have an opinion or the minute you have a preference, the minute you don't have like something, you're in judgment, you need to be a more spiritual person. No, you're allowed to have your preferences. Not all of us like everyone and everything. You can have that discernment and say, no, that's not for me. Now let's take this inside as well. How do you know when you're judging yourself or you're actually discerning something about yourself to gain more awareness? Okay, so let's use the example. I'll use one from my life. So sometimes I can be impatient with others, impatient with myself. Now, I'm judging that about myself if I'm making it wrong. If I'm making me wrong, if I'm like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be so impatient, that I'm a terrible person, whatever my judgments may be with that. If I'm making myself feel bad, if I'm making myself feel wrong, I'm in judgment. However, if I'm discerning a behavior that doesn't make me feel good and that I'd like to evolve, that I'd like to grow out of, I can go, you know, that really didn't feel good when I acted like that or when I was impatient. So I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to choose a different response. And if I do catch myself in judgment, I'm going to forgive myself for judging myself. Because like I said, as humans, we all judge. You've probably judged me at least once in this video, or yourself, or whatever. So it's okay. It's okay. If you judge, that doesn't make you less spiritual or less loving or less deserving or any of those things. So if you catch yourself judging someone else or yourself or whatever, Notice it. Say, I forgive myself for judging. Forgive myself for judging. And if you're noticing you're having a big reaction to something, you are getting triggered, then there's the work. Then dive in. Why do I keep judging the situation so harshly? Why am I having this big reaction? What am I really making this mean? What is this big judgment I'm having triggering inside of me? Because anytime we get really judgy about something and really triggered about something, it's revealing to us something inside of us that we haven't quite worked through yet. An old wound, an old hurt, an old belief system that is pushing up against. So those big triggers and those big reactions and those big judgments are alarm systems. Usually the people and things we judge are sometimes reminders of things that were hurtful from the past. So of course we're going to judge them, or they're unexpressed, unowned parts of ourselves. So for example, let's go back to the friend who had the flaky friend date. If she is just judging and judging and judging her flakiness, well then maybe she needs to look inside herself as where she's flaky. Maybe not with others, but with herself. Where does she break her own word? Where is that judgment triggering inside of her? So I want you to work with this week. Work with that distinction between judgment and discernment. Notice when you're judging because you have a big trigger, because you can't let it go, because your reaction is bigger than the reality of the situation. And forgive yourself when you catch yourself judging. Forgive myself for judging and be willing to do the work on what that's bringing up. And please let yourself have discernment. Don't place this expectation that you have to like everything and everyone. If something isn't for you, you're allowed to have that preference and go, no, sorry, not for me. Actually, let's rewind. Don't even have to apologize. No, that's not for me. No, this is not a self-honoring choice. Okay? So yay for discernment and yay for judgment too, because it's a teacher. We just don't want to hang out in judgment because it's yuck and it doesn't feel good of ourselves and others. We want to learn from it, forgive it, and then move on so we can be less judgy and more discerning, because it's that discernment that helps us tap into our intuition and really make the self-honoring choices that get us closer to what we really desire in life. All right, everybody, if you have a topic that you'd like me to answer in a live, DM me, and I'm going to be doing about 1 to 2 of these a week and answering your questions. So I hope to see you all soon. Bye, everybody.